Hi planner friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel and I love all things stationery. Today I'm really excited because I'm going to be talking about my favorite planner ever, the Hobonichi Cousin. The Hobonichi Cousin is one of the main planners I use on a day-to-day basis, and it's been one of the main planners that I've used since 2019. This is my 4th year in a Cousin. And spoiler alert, I'll be using a Hobonichi Cousin in 2023. I'm almost done with this setup and I'm planning to film a separate setup video, so stay tuned for that in the next few weeks. Today though, I am planning to do a flip through of my 2022 Cousin and talk more specifically about how I use this planner over the last year. But I also thought it would be fun to pull my older planners out of storage and talk about how my planning style in the Hobonichi Cousin has evolved since 2019. When I first discovered the Hobonichi Cousin and the Hobonichi brand back in 2019, that was also around the same time that I was first introduced to the planner and journaling communities on Instagram and YouTube. And finding those online communities they've been such a source of inspiration. They've been so fun to be a part of. And my planning style has evolved a lot since finding planning and journaling communities online. And finding those communities has also helped me see planning and journaling as my main hobbies. And that framing has been really valuable for me because essentially, through that framing, I have been giving myself more permission to spend more time and money, to be honest, on planning and stationery. If this is my main hobby, I feel less guilty about how much time I spend planning for the week ahead, because this is also a form of relaxation for me. It's how I decompress. It's how I flex my creative muscles, and I love it. So, this is all to say that, thinking about how my planning style has evolved in the Hobonichi Cousin is also an exercise in reflecting about how my planning style has evolved since finding the planner and journaling communities on YouTube and Instagram. And so I thought I should just point that out and shout that out because I love you all. I love Planner YouTube. I love Planner IG. I get so much inspiration. I've learned so much from so many of you, and it's been a great opportunity to connect with different folks from lots of different walks of life. And so I'm just in a space where I'm feeling really grateful for Planner YouTube and Planner IG, and wanted to shout that out here because I feel like the Hobonichi Cousin was in some way my introduction to these online communities. Okay, long introduction aside, let's jump in to doing a flip through of my Hobonichi Cousin. So the first thing I want to point out is that this is a Spring Start Cousin. When I started 2022, I had set up an A5 Stylogy as a bullet journal, and I was planning to use that A5 Stylogy in lieu of my Hobonichi Cousin. By March, I realized that I was missing the Hobonichi Cousin and the structure of it, and I was mostly missing the weekly layouts. I love the weekly layouts in the Cousin, and so I ended up picking up a Spring Start Cousin. Now, when I picked up this Spring Start Cousin, which goes from April 1st to March 31st of the following year, I knew I would only use this through the end of the calendar year. And so when I started using this planner and I set up this planner, I was already thinking about the last 3 months in this planner as extra notes pages. So I thought that would just be useful for you all to know, because I was never planning to use those pages for planning. And so I always felt like I had extra notes pages and places to play with different layouts and experiment with things in this book. So because I picked this up in April, I bought this in the beginning of April or end of March, I was right in the throes of finishing my dissertation. I finished my dissertation back in April of this year, and so my setup was very bare bones. I've added these stickers like one at a time as I've come across them. I did very minimal setup for this planner, and then ended up adding in more decor and more of my personal touch, so to speak, later on as I had more time to play with my planners and finish this setup. But I jumped right into using it because I needed it as a functional planner. So for this year overview, I haven't used this layout much in the past, but last year I decided to use this as a place to track the days we had childcare and the days my son was homesick with us. Like many other parents and people out there know, when my son started daycare, he was bringing home all of the germs and all of the colds. And it was so frustrating because we finally had childcare and we were spending so much money on childcare. And then we didn't actually have childcare. He was homesick with us, and then we would get sick. And so it was a really rough transition from him being home with us to him being in childcare, even though I completely think it's worth it. Like, I'm so happy he has full-time childcare now. But I just wanted to record and remember how rough that transition was and how often he was home with us. Because I certainly have a tendency to be quite hard on myself. And I find myself recently thinking, like, why haven't I gotten more done over the last 6 months? And this tracker serves as a good reminder of how hard the last few months have been, and how many daycare disruptions we have experienced because he's been sick with us, or we've been sick from something he's given us from daycare. And so I think I might use this layout for something similar in 2023, although I'm hoping there will be fewer daycare interruptions as his immune system has adjusted to being around more kids. So for the next two layouts, I've used these in a couple different ways in this planner. All of the different ways that I've used this layout has been inconsistent, as you can see. And so I'm hoping to be more consistent with my 2023 setup. But the first way I used this layout was to track how many hours a day I was working on my dissertation. I got the idea to track this, what I call, to set up this deep work tracker from the book Deep Work by Cal Newport, which is about different ways to approach work that requires a lot of attention and focus. And I found that book very helpful as I was trying to really transition into writing my dissertation full time, which is a big transition when you're in graduate school. And I found that transition really hard. And that book was really helpful. And one of the things he recommends is to track how many hours a day you're working towards one of these big goals that require deep work. And I found tracking how many hours a day I would work on my dissertation really helpful, both because it was motivating to me, seeing how much work I was putting in, especially when it feels like you're not making any progress. It's like such a slow process. And so seeing, like, quantifying how much work I was putting in, I found really helpful. And I have done something like this probably since 2019. So I've been doing some variation of this deep work tracker for a long time, and I put it in here in April as I was finishing up my dissertation. But my dissertation, I finished it in April, which is, I still can't believe, like, saying that out loud, I'm still in a state of disbelief. I can't believe it's over. And so I decided to change things up in May, not because I didn't have, like, I have other projects ongoing, other research projects, but I wasn't working much in May and June as I was finishing up, like, graduation requirements. I was preparing for my defense. Then there was commencement, and we moved in June from Los Angeles to Northern Virginia. And so May and June, I wasn't really working, and I decided I would use this layout as a habit tracker. I was really only successful habit tracking in May, and then I completely fell off. The move was really stressful and things were busy, and I can't remember if I had this planner on me most of the time. So anyway, I fell off habit tracking, and I wasn't doing that much extra fun planning. I was doing the bare minimum planning required to keep life moving through a busy season. I tried to get back into habit tracking in October and November. There was some success. I habit tracked for a week or two there, but I really didn't get back into it. And so I'm hoping to get back into habit tracking and really trying to get back on, like, being on top of my habits in 2023. And then here, I had originally set this up as a future log for January, February, and March. And then I ended up playing with it and trying to brainstorm other ideas for how I could use this layout in the upcoming year. Like, I was thinking about potentially writing down everything that I worked on each month. But that I've actually moved to my separate work planner, which is an A5 plotter, if anybody's interested. I talk about my work planner in my 2023 planner lineup video, which I can link down in the description box below. But I've moved a lot of my work planning out of here. And so I think I'll use this as a habit tracker next year, but we'll figure it out. And the nice part about this is how you can use this layout each month can vary. Like, you can set it up in different ways. And then we go into the monthly spreads. And I don't use the monthly spreads a ton. I mostly use them to document big due dates, big tasks, big events, like our move, all of the things that were happening around that time. I've been trying to integrate into these monthly spreads more memory keeping and, writing in fun stuff that we're doing as a family, or I'm doing independently, or I'm doing with my husband. And so I think that's one way I do want to change how I use this in 2023, is adding in more memory keeping and maybe gratitude to these monthly layouts. But they also do serve a function for me, even if they just have at a high level what's going on that month. I do always find it helpful, even though I don't use these spreads a ton, to see at a very high level what's going on. Like, we were taking a trip to the Poconos, I had a conference, and then it was Thanksgiving. And seeing that all together really helps ground me in the fact that, like, November has very few work days. You should think very carefully about what your priorities are and adjust for the amount of time you will have to actually get work done. That's really the value I see in a monthly layout like this for me. And then in the monthly spreads for 2023, I did a little bit of future planning here, actually, where I just jotted down some stuff I knew was coming up in January, which I've transferred to my 2023 planner. And that's usually how I use, because the Hobonichi cousin usually comes with, the monthly layouts have a few extra months. And I always use those as a future log, essentially. And then we move into the weekly layouts. And the weekly layouts, like many people, I think this is one of my favorite parts of the Hobonichi cousin. It's a beautiful vertical layout. It's so clean. I love the 24 hours. I love that you have an extra column here. The weekly layout is why I always come back to the cousin. Even if I can recreate the dailies in the A5 Stylogy, I can't quite recreate how beautiful the weekly layouts are in the cousin. And so the way I primarily have used the weekly layouts in the past is at the beginning of the week, so either Monday morning or Sunday night, I will slot in hard deadlines or hard things that I know, like things that are scheduled, things that I know are going to happen. So it was my friend's dissertation defense, my dissertation defense. Those I wrote down the weekend before as I was setting up the week, and a deadline I had. And then at the end of each day, I would go in and write everything I did for that day. And so this is basically where I rapid log all of the things I get done and things I do and how I spend my time in a day. And rapid log is, I think, coming from bullet journal lingo, which essentially means just recording what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And that's how I use this weekly spread. And that's how I've used the weekly spread actually for quite a bit of time. I like putting in stuff that I know is happening and then sort of like record keeping throughout the day and at the end of the day what's actually happened. And if appointments get canceled, they get canceled and I'll cross them out, or I can get a box sticker that fits them. But I don't worry too much about this being perfect. But it's also a reason why I don't pre-plan far ahead of time in here. I like having a blank layout to set up the weekend before or the Monday morning of the week. And so I really try to keep this blank and only put stuff in the weekend before, which I think also eliminates the reduces the likelihood that I'm going to have to delete, it's not the right word, or have to white something out, or I've put something on here that's not going to happen anymore. And then in this leftmost column, I have used this in a lot of different ways, and I actually feel like I haven't really settled on how I like to use this blank column. But for a long time, I would use this as a place to write down things that I wanted to do in an upcoming week. I wouldn't pre-plan my weeks, but if I knew I wanted to get something done or had a big deadline this specific week, I would write it down here. So that's one way I've used this left column. I've also used it when I was doing more work planning in here. I would put the top 3 things I wanted to get done that week, or the big rocks that I really needed to focus on that week. I would put that here sometimes. You can see that here, my top 3. And I like that for a while, but I've moved, like I said, most of my work planning into a separate planner. And so I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with this column. So if you have ideas, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos and trying to get some inspiration for different ways to use the weekly layout for the Hobonichi Cousin in 2023. And so I'm curious if you're watching this, how you use this left column of the weekly layout, as I'm still trying to figure out how I want to use it in the next year. And then in August, I fell off and moved back into my A5 Stalogy. For whatever reason, I was missing the Stalogy and I wanted to set one up. And so I set up a whole new Stalogy and I moved out of the Cousin for a couple of months. I ended up recently, I taped in these Instax Pictures. I print pictures from my Instax camera every few weeks, and they're all over my office and our house. I put them in different places, like my wallet, my planner cover. I tape them onto the wall in my office. And I thought it would be fun. I pulled down all of the Instax pictures that were for 2022 and then tape them in here with washi tape a couple days ago, now that I'm getting ready to archive this, because the Instax pictures definitely add a lot of bulk to the planner. But I added them in here just because even though I was out of this for a month and a half, I came back to this planner in September. And this planner is definitely the most complete of mine for 2022. And so I thought it would be fun to have all of the Instax pictures I printed in 2022 recorded in here, which also happened to be weeks where I wasn't using the planner all that much. And so taping them in here wasn't like I was taping over anything. I had a lot of extra space. This was from a trip we took to New York on Labor Day weekend, which was really fun. My family is from New York. I grew up in New York City, and I hadn't been to New York since before the pandemic started. And I was really missing home and New York pizza, New York bagels. This was a really fun trip, and it was really fun to set this spread up to remember that weekend. Oops. And then at some point around here, I was missing the Hobonichi cousin again, and I found my way back to it. And then I picked right back up, and I was using these weekly layouts in a very similar way, where I would, put in my appointments that I had coming up, and then at the end of the day, I would record how I spent my time and what I did. I also was trying to add a little bit more fun memory keeping and stickers by like hand lettering in some stuff we were watching. I was exploring adding some tracking to the bottom. And so, you can see this continuing to evolve. But the main ways that I use the weekly layout has been pretty consistent, even though I add some stuff in here and there. Then up here, I was using the zig dot markers and trying to track my water intake. I might try to do that again. I like that, and it helps remind me to drink more water. So yeah, and then the weekly layouts look pretty consistent from here on out, and I've used them pretty consistently. Some weeks when things get really busy, I'm less diligent about filling in stuff at the end of the day. And so this is more so reflecting like my plans at the beginning of the week, but that's okay. That still helps me with memory keeping, and still helps to remind me what was going on each week and what I was working on each week. A lot of my stickers are from, and if you have any questions about where my stickers are from, please leave them down in the comments. I'm realizing I haven't mentioned any of them. I subscribe to Sterling Ink's sub box. I love her stuff. Those are the stickers I use probably the most consistently, because I've been trying to buy less stuff, but I still get her subscription, and so I have new stickers every month from Sterling Ink, which is really fun. These were from Paper Minty Studio, Paper Bits Co. I think this is Create with Pen. Yeah, I love like finding different sticker shops, and I have stuff in here from lots of different shops. So if you have any questions about where anything is from, again, please leave it down in the comments, and I'm happy to let you know. And then these are the last few weeks of December. I'm like kind of sad to see this planner go on the shelf. This planner has been through a lot with me. And here I was trying to use the sidebar to write down some personal stuff I wanted to get done this week. And then there's a lot of memory keeping from the Christmas holiday with my family. This was the first week I could move into my new Hobonichi cousin, and so I did. And so the rest of the weeklies are pretty blank. I think they're all blank. I might have used one or two for notes. Like here, where I'm trying to decide on which planners to use. And then as you transition from the weekly pages to the daily pages, you get this 2-page spread in the cousin called Turning the Page. And when I was setting this up back in April, I decided to use this to track my work goals and my research pipeline. So these are papers that I wanted to get published this year. It's way too ambitious of a list. But these were papers that were sort of in progress, and I wanted to sort of track their progress over the course of the year, and most of these have made very little progress because I just finished my dissertation. Three of these are my dissertation chapters, and I have been completely unable to jump back into it to start working on revising them to get published. And I think I was being very unrealistic here, thinking I would move them along by the end of the year. But anyway, yeah, I set this up with some work goals and trying to track the progress of some papers I was trying to get published. I think I'll use this spread in the upcoming year to have more personal goals here, as my work goal planning and goal setting is all happening in my A5 plotter. And then the Spring Start Cousin had this extra grid page before the daily start, which I decided to use for research ideas. I like having that in any notebook I'm using because, sometimes ideas for projects come to you at random times, and I really love recording that and being able to look back on them as, I'm thinking about working on new projects and trying to brainstorm ideas for new projects. And then we jump into the daily pages. So I got this planner in the beginning of April, but I believe I didn't start using it until maybe a week in. And so these pages were blank. And the blank pages I use in a bunch of different ways. I'll have notes. Sometimes there's journaling. A lot of what's covered up is journaling because I have been very inconsistent with journaling over the last year. And the way that I have journaled primarily is just by journaling in blank spaces in my planners. So I'm either journaling in here or in empty notes pages in my Hobonichi weeks. And so stuff you'll see covered up is mostly journaling that is private, long form journaling about various things going on. And then once we get to, so I guess I started using this planner maybe today on this date, the 14th, because most of the time, and I know I must have started it on this date because most of the time I use this planner as a day per page, as a daily planner. I like the dated aspect of it, and I like using 1 day per page, like I just said. And so most of my planning is happening that way in this planner, actually, writing down to-do lists that I'm then trying to tackle in a day is happening on the daily pages. So the way that I have used the daily pages recently is I would, let's see if I could find a good example, maybe here. So I would write down my schedule for the day here, which is definitely redundant with the weeklies, and I go back and forth on it. But when I am using this planner, I have it open to a daily page sitting on my desk next to my computer, or if I'm downstairs doing stuff, I have it open to this page. And so it's really helpful for me to see my schedule here because this is what I'm looking at. So I would write down my daily schedule for the day, and then I usually write down my work to-do list here, my personal to-do list here, and then this area is for notes or journaling or other lists. And that's really how I have used this planner for most of this year. On the weekends, I don't always need a full day per page. And so sometimes I do use it as a day per page, like I am here. But sometimes I would journal on the weekend page because I just didn't have as many tasks I was trying to get done, or the things I'm trying to get done on the weekends are very routine, and so I don't really need to write them down. This is the date I passed my dissertation, and I journaled all about it. Oh my gosh, I still can't believe it's over. Grad school. Both felt like It flew by and aged me a million years. But back to what I was saying, on the weekends, I don't always need a day per page. And so on all of the weekends I'm seeing I'm using a day per page. Sometimes I would use that page for just a brain dump of things I wanted to get done on the weekend. Sometimes I would use that page for journaling on the weekend. It would stay blank. Like the planner doesn't get as, I don't use it as much on days I'm not working. It's days that I'm working where I really feel like a day per page is valuable to have everything I need to get done personally and for work. On days where I'm not working and it's just a personal to-do list, I don't always need a day per page. And so the Hobonichi cousin is most incomplete on those days. But because, you know, I work full time, most of the time I do need a day per page. Here I tipped in a packing list. This is when we were getting ready to move and life was just getting really busy. And it was around this time that I wasn't working as much and we were in transit, moving, and then we were living in our new place, but we didn't have furniture. And so, and I didn't have any of my other stationery. I was using this a lot less, and I was planning a lot less. I was doing most of my planning in my Hobonichi weeks and in an A5 Stylogy I picked up. And it was around this time that I started thinking about moving into the A5 Stylogy, which I ended up doing in August, or I think sometime in maybe late July. I'm trying to see when these pages become more blank. Yeah. So it's around here I really moved into the Hobonichi, or excuse me, the A5 Stylogy. And then I moved back into the cousin right in the beginning of September, or maybe in the middle of September, because I use these first few pages of September to write down some lists, some collections, some stuff I wanted to get done, just miscellaneous notes pages. Swatched some washi tapes I picked up from a local stationery store. And then I really get back into it around, mid-September. Here I was playing with some different layouts for how I might use the Hobonichi cousin. Like I was thinking I could split the page up into 2 columns and have a day per column. That hasn't really worked out, although I sometimes do split up Saturdays into Saturday and Sunday. Like if this said Saturday, I would use this one page for my weekends and then give myself an extra notes page on Sunday. And then when I don't use the planner in the day per page way, like here you can see I have at a running weekend to-do list and then a Saturday and Sunday to-do list. And then I ended up giving myself Sunday as an extra notes page. And I like this setup because I don't really need a day per page on Saturdays and Sundays when I'm not working. And so on days where I don't use a day per page, I use those extra pages as notes pages. Here I wrote down a meal plan, and then I ended up also tipping in this extra page where I had sort of an overview of what I wanted to get done for work. Here I was traveling this week and I didn't bring my cousin because I was trying to travel light. And so then I ended up having extra notes pages, which again, I just use for miscellaneous notes or collections, or sometimes journaling. And you can see, like, I decorate some pages. I love hand lettering, and I have a bunch of brush pens. Sometimes I'll hand letter in quotes that I read or come across or I'm listening to in a podcast. I like adding stuff like that to the daily pages. This makes it feel like I'm just recording all the different types of things going on in my life and different media I'm consuming at different points. And then at some point I stopped adding a schedule here, which I add back in it occasionally, but I've been playing with different ways to use this daily layout. But I really like when I'm playing with different ways to use this daily layout, it's still keeping the sort of day per page, but I've been just writing down different like types of to-do list in different sections without the schedule also here. Because I have my work schedule, we use Outlook, and I have all of that digitally, and I get reminders on my phone and on my watch. And so I've become less reliant on writing down the schedule, but sometimes I like writing it down, or for whatever reason, I feel like it's necessary to help keep me on track. And then here again, we were going on a trip, so I used blank notes pages for a packing list, and then I didn't use my planner for a couple days, and then I got back into it. I will sometimes pre-decorate my daily pages with Sterling Inks kit specifically, because I do get like so many stickers each month. It feels like I don't try to hoard them. I don't save them for the future because I know I'm going to get another sub box next month. And so I've been using those a lot in the daily pages. And sometimes I will pre-decorate the daily pages with her stickers. But I don't pre-decorate the daily pages consistently at all. I decorate them as I have time and interest. And if they're not decorated, then that's fine. And then so the Hobonichi Cousin comes with these monthly layouts, where you get like this blank page for the month in between the daily pages for a new month, for each month. I've used this monthly blank page in a lot of different ways. So a lot of times it's blank. Here I was trying to, for this month, have a monthly to-do list, to buy list, and then currently what media I'm consuming currently, listening to, watching, and reading. And I like this. I think it's in May. One way that I've used it, that I think I might continue to use it with my upcoming planner, is to basically have my monthly goal plans on this blank page. And this is very much mirrored after the Cultivate What Matters Power Sheets monthly plan. So looking back at my goals, what are the monthly things I need to achieve, and the weekly action items. And I like this setup a lot, and I think that this is how I'm going to try to use this page in 2023. But we'll see. You can see I used this page very inconsistently in 2022. So it's very possible that I end up doing something similar for 2023. And then here, just a bunch of notes. And I think that's probably because I was out at a conference these days. I didn't take my planner and ended up with some blank pages, more dailies and notes, some journaling. And then here's where this is basically the last like few weeks. I've been using this planner less because I've been working less. And so I taped in a picture of the cover page from my first YouTube video because I was really excited that I finally did it. This is something I've wanted to do for a while now, and I was proud of myself for following through and figuring it out. And then I was experimenting with a new layout for the daily pages last week when I was still using this on a day-to-day, and I kind of like this. I might try this again for the new year, but I was again splitting the page in two, and here I was writing my personal to-do list, and then here I was writing my work to-do list. And I like having, I need them separately, my to-do list, and I kind of like having them here like this, because sometimes I feel like how I was doing it for a while was essentially I would have my work to-do list up here and my personal to-do list down here. And I feel like I ended up deprioritizing this because my eye would always go up here. And when they were more on like equal footing, I wasn't just focused on my work to-do list. But, and that was sort of the rationale. And I like this setup, and then I could use whatever blank space I have left for notes or quotes or other things I want to record. So yeah, that's how I was using it right towards the end of this planner. This was the last day I was working before I took vacation. So I haven't been using this planner much except for memory keeping. I printed and tipped in, this was our holiday card from this year. I also tipped in some pictures that I printed with my Instax from Christmas and Christmas Eve with my family and my son and my husband. And that's really how I've been using this for the last couple of weeks or the last like week and a half, because I haven't been working again. I've been on vacation, and when I'm on vacation, I don't really need a day per page. I've been using my Hobonichi weeks as my primary planner for the last 2 weeks, and I haven't really felt like I needed the cousin, but I have been keeping up with like memory keeping in the weekly pages. So that is how I use the cousin in 2022. And then we have the last 3 months, because this was the Spring Start cousin. And back here, I wrote down some notes. I did some journaling. I didn't use these pages really consistently for any one specific thing, but it was really helpful having all of the extra notes pages. When I started this video, I said I would talk a bit about how my planning style has evolved. And I don't want this to be too long because I think it's already creeping up to be quite long. But it's Hobonichi cousin, and I have so much to say, and I love this planner so much. But essentially, like when I started using the Hobonichi cousin back in 2019, I was using it in a very bare bones way. I barely used any stickers. I was using this kind of like a bullet journal is what I would say. I would have daily to-do lists back here sometimes, notes, sometimes journaling. There's a lot of notes from a meeting. My guess is the meeting was about a research project. And this, this was very well used, but it wasn't like how I was using it was not that intentional. And then on the weekly pages, yeah, I'd use these in different types of ways, like blocking off time I was going to be working on my dissertation, to-do list, blocking off meetings or class I was teaching for. You can see like how much my planning style and what I've used this for has changed over this time period. And so that's where I started in 2019. By 2020, it was really in 2020 when I was working with the Hobonichi cousin that I realized I wanted a date per page. Here, I was still bullet journaling, and just sometimes I would write dailies, sometimes I didn't need dailies, but there was no rhyme or reason. Like, my to-do lists weren't restricted to one day. I didn't use a date per page. I ignored the dates for the most part. But by the time I started using this planner in 2020, I realized that I love a date per page. So essentially, like, using the cousin is how I learned that I need or want, love, I don't know the right word. I love a day per page for planning out what I need to get done in a day. It's been really valuable because I feel like I have become a lot more productive since I've figured out that daily planning is really the key to how I can be the most productive. Like, a good daily plan really sets me up well at the beginning of the day, whereas having a brain dump or a long weekly to-do list just leaves me feeling overwhelmed most of the time and without a lot of direction in terms of what I specifically need to get done that day. And so the Hobonichi cousin is how I figured out that I love daily planning. And it's also where I figured out that I love decorative planning. Like, look at this compared to my 2019 weeks. Like, these are so bare bones. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just my planning style changed a ton. Like, I got really into stickers. This was really in the middle of the pandemic when I had a lot of time on my hands. And this was a lot of fun. I love flipping back on this. This brings me so much joy. And I have such a clear sense of like what was going on. I got really into memory keeping using the Hobonichi cousin. And that's continued on over the last few years. And it brings me a lot of joy. This is our wedding day. We got virtually married on Microsoft Teams during the midst of the pandemic. And I love that that's recorded here. And I'm sure there's more about, our virtual wedding somewhere else in this planner. And having these memories is like one of the main reasons I love the Hobonichi cousin. I love how my planning has evolved in the Hobonichi cousin over the last few years. And I'm really excited to see how it continues to evolve in 2023. So I know this has been a really long video. If you stuck with me this long, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I'll catch you soon. I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.